All right, Sheldon, we are both jacked up after
I'm
last
fired
night's
up. I'm
challenge.
I'm hype. I'm hype. I'm hype.
We were up a little bit earlier for us because we are both
Yes.
night owls.
Yep.
But let's do our intros and then we'll just dig straight in because we saw some masterful moves by Queen Cam this week. I'm John
The
Chidley
challenge
Hill.
is back.
I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am a fired up Sheldon Alexander.
Fired Up Sheldon Alexander is the best. This is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. And as per usual, we're talking about the challenge Final Reckoning. We've got just a touch of like housekeeping to do to get to the exciting stuff, to get to the fireworks factory. We got to go through a few other scenes before
Okay.
we talk about Queen Cam.
Well, first off, John, I just want to say something. So our schedules, I know we give you a peek behind the curtain every once in a while, just in terms of how we put the podcast together, and depending on our schedules, because both work in sports TV, it's dependent upon our schedules when we watch the episode and when we end up then taping the podcast. And so I messaged John saying, "Hey, I got a pretty busy week. Can we tape it a little earlier on Wednesday? Not sure when I'll be able to get to the episode just because I'm tied up with a lot of other things at work." And so last night I didn't get to watch the episode right away, but I kept getting text messages or Facebook messages or like just little notifications about the challenge. And so I would see it or I'd see like keywords and then stop paying attention to it because I didn't want to know what was going on. But everyone was just so hyped, just like, there were some that I was able to see that just said, "I love the challenge." And I was like, okay, that means this is a very dope episode. And so going in, my expectations were high, John,
Yeah.
and they were still surpassed. Like, that was a great episode. I'm so happy the challenge is back. I don't even know if it's because we've been just waiting for this season to pick up, and so now that it finally did, that's what has me so hyped, or if just overall it was just a dope ass episode.
It's like in boxing when a masterful boxer throws a series of jabs before hitting you with that right hook, with that uppercut.
Yep.
That's
A little
what the
rope-a-dope.
challenge. Yeah, that's what the challenge did to us. Kept throwing those social drama jabs, and
Yep.
then boom, political uppercut.
This was just incredible. And I mean, first off, they picked up from the end of last episode with a heated argument between Davon and Shane, right?
Yes.
And it was weird because at the end of the day, Shane definitely went overboard, right? Like I'm pretty sure
Yes.
everyone would acknowledge. I want to give a shout out to Nelson too for stepping in and telling Shane to chill out and like there's no need for you to use that language and disrespect Davon like that. But really, the thing I want to bring up here, John, is Davon. I keep talking about this for people who aren't familiar with her from Big Brother, right? And I'm going to emphasize this point. Her first season on Big Brother, she was fiery. She was going at people all the time. And she let her emotions get in the way of the gameplay. And so now to see her from that person to 2 seasons on Big Brother, another season on The Challenge, right? What was that? Champs versus Stars? Is that where she... Right? And then now to see her on this, it was so interesting to see her go back at Shane to let him know, hey, there's a line and I'm not going to tolerate certain shit, to, then going back into the bathroom where she's trying to like, relax a little bit and tell herself, chill out. It's okay. Don't let him get to you. Like, it was cool to see her show that restraint and like see the growth from this episode or from her prior appearances on reality TV. You know what I mean? It was cool to see her have that because I feel like it is very important to like not allow yourself to get walked over. So you need to let them know like, yo, I'm not going to tolerate this. But then also to then take a step back and be like, hey, I got to chill myself. This isn't the person that I want to show on TV.
I say it all the time, but the challenge is a lot like prison, where you have to establish early that you're not to be fucked with.
Yep.
But you can't also go around starting shit or holding on to those vendettas because then you're going to get shivved in the shower.
Yes.
right? And like that's partly Shane's problem, is that he can't let these things go,
Yeah. I
right?
mean, it's
Like
true.
it should have just been like, oh, you guys didn't listen to my well-intended advice. Okay, I
Yeah.
understand. I see
Moving
where
on.
your chips are. This is information that I can use at a later date. No problem. But because he can't let that go,
Hmm.
he's putting me in the awkward position where I have to agree with Nelson. That's not the person that I want to be, agreeing
It's
with Nelson. That's
But
not.
Nelson's spot on here, right? He's spot on. Like, in no way does that benefit you in any way, right? Like, first off, you just look like a tool because you're disrespecting a woman like that on national TV, and there's no point for that, like in any form of life, much less on national TV, right? But then
Yeah.
also, like, you're just making a scene in front of the whole house, which is, was it Zach pointed out? Like, Shane just does this consistently every single season, and it's just not a smart move at all. And you're just creating a bigger target on your back, right? But as Zach pointed out, hey, you provide like security or basically a greater shadow, right, over him and his partner, so they can kind of just slide through. But
Well, in these shows, like if when they're all on the plane and they're all at the airport and they're seeing like getting the lay of the land of who's participating in this season,
mhm,
I would always be happy to see Shane, because I would
yeah,
just be like, okay, cool, that guy's going to take care of himself. That guy's going to. There's one week that I'm not on the chopping block.
yeah,
You know what
no,
I
that
mean?
totally makes sense. Totally
And,
makes sense.
and like to a little extent, to a lesser extent, it's the same with Nelson. Like there's some people where they're like, cool, this is gonna be one of the first people that goes F. Thank God. Like I don't have to stress on this.
Yeah. No, it totally makes sense, man. And speaking of being on the chopping block, right away we head to the Armageddon, which again looks like the scene from the California Love video, right?
Yeah.
And you know, right away I got hyped because I'm thinking, okay, cool, at least we're getting some action right off the bat. That means there could be time for even more action, right? So I was hyped up to see them get right to the elimination round, or the Armageddon, so to speak. So right away we get to find out who got voted into the elimination, right? And as we discussed at the end of last week's episode, there was conflicting scenarios, right? Because people
Hmm.
they hadn't really figured out the game, or thought about who they should, or figured out how they should be voting. So we discussed the fact that people would be trying to use their burn votes, and that would end up screwing them up, right?
Yep.
And so we find out. We'll get to how it got to this point, because that's more for when it gets to the redemption house. We'll keep. I'll try to keep it chronological here, but
Hmm.
like in terms of going behind the scenes to figuring out who voted for who. But right away we find out that it's Tori and Derrick. They're the ones going in, and it's not the rookies. Were you surprised by this, John?
Yeah, I was. I have multiple question marks and exclamation marks in my notes, and
As do
it's
I.
just
That I typed out. I did not write.
it's just like you said, and as we predicted last week, they fucked around and by doing their little burn vote, ended
Mhm.
up putting in the wrong teams, right?
Yes.
And
Well.
the team that really screwed, there's two teams that really screwed this up.
Mhm.
The first is Cara Maria and Marie, and by screwed up, I mean they're playing their own game, but they had told Tori that they were going to vote for Brad and Kyle. The
Yeah.
other team is Sylvia and Joss, who, like, that was a total burn vote.
Yeah.
Brad and Kyle also voted for them. Again, a burn vote. Like, the only ones who it makes sense that they voted for Derrick and Tori are Faith and Angela.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Faith and Angela could have voted for Jose and Davon, which would have made
Mhm.
sense from their perspective. But those are their alliance members, and Angela is showing loyalty to her alliance, although not her boyfriend. So,
So here's the thing, though, and I feel like we'll get to this because I feel like later on there's like a full on breakdown of like who the alliances are and who people should vote for. But I
mhm.
will say in this instance, right, like the biggest thing it showed, and just to emphasize what we were talking about at the end of last episode, was people were caught in between voting for your alliances and voting to avoid being in the elimination, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it completely kind of flipped the mentality of what the game normally is. And so in this situation, again, as you just mentioned, the burn votes end up sending Tori and Derrick in. Now, that's not the only like crazy scenario or maybe surprising scenario that played out, because now we find out who voted for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Tori and Derrick have to pick from Faith and Angela, Joss and Sylvia, and Brad and Kyle, right? They pick Joss and Sylvia. That was a weird pick, no?
That was a mistake. And like
I said weird pick, you said mistake. I like that because I agree with you.
I mean, for the record, I know that
Mhm.
hindsight is 2020. They lost this competition to Joss and Sylvia, but I have to say, for the record, and I will even take a photo and post it on Twitter. I wrote in my notes before the competition began, I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Because as I think it was Zach just providing lots of insight this week. As Zach said, you got to go with Faith and Angela. Like, this is obviously a physical competition where you're going to be running up and down these half pipes.
Exactly.
And Faith and Angela, although athletic, Faith in particular, height plays a role.
Yeah, definitely.
And Joss might be the tallest person in the house. It's like between him, Tony, and Zach.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like forget genders. It's about height. Go with the two shorter people.
Yeah,
Faith
and that's
Angela,
the thing.
who I think are like 5'4" and 5'2". Like, Angela looks quite petite. So, do that thing.
So at first, I was thinking along the same way as you, John, in terms of, you can clearly see the two half pipes there, right? Like you can kind of get a basic understanding of what the game might be before you pick who you're going against, right? So I was trying to figure out why would they pick that team. And then it hit me. I think that Tori didn't have faith in them to win at all, regardless of who they were going against. So she ends up saying, let's go against Joss and Sylvia, because she was afraid of losing to Faith. Like, if there was a chance that they would have lost to Faith and Angela, she would have been so embarrassed and it would have looked really, really bad if they lost to Faith and Angela. So I think she made the choice on purpose to then say, let's go against Joss and Sylvia, because if they lose, it's like, all right, you lost. But do you know what I mean? Like, it would have been super embarrassing to them if they had lost, or for her, in her mind, if they had lost to to Angela and Faith. That's what I think was really behind this choice.
That's a good point. And as I was listening to you, it occurred to me that the other thing that might have run through her mind is that in the competitions we've seen so far, Joss and Sylvia have had bad teamwork, where Joss just forgets about Sylvia.
It's interesting, yeah. That's a good point.
This competition, like, everyone focused on the fact that, Derrick did not help Tori. Like, Derrick did not help Tori get up the ramps repeatedly, and that could have been the difference.
Yeah.
Both Tori and Zach pointed to that in their confessional commentary. But if Joss doesn't help Sylvia, which has often been the case in their competitions, this looks entirely different.
Yeah.
So maybe she figured, they win. Because they only lost by one ball.
Yeah, it was close.
So maybe her reasoning was, Joss can do this, but can Sylvia? And can Sylvia do this without Joss?
Yeah.
So let's give Tori some credit. She's not a dummy.
I also think too that, again, she has no faith in Derrick, right? She has zero faith in Derrick. So again, I don't think that she was thinking they were going to win regardless of who they went against, because she has such little faith in Derrick. But also, the thing to remember is she also knows that there's a redemption house. So she's not really that worried. Like, she still knows, okay, well, if we lose, well, we're still going to redemption house, and the game's not completely over for us. So I think she was falling back on all of those factors, and that's what led to this decision. That's what I think. Who knows? Maybe we'll never know. But
I have to give a shout out to Nick Ashburn, our colleague in the sports industry. You and I always dance around where we work, But
Okay.
as he is not on this podcast, I'll just say he's on Yahoo Sports and has his own podcast
Okay.
with former Toronto Blue Jays catcher JP Arancibia about all things baseball. You should check
Okay.
that out. But he and I were having a conversation last night at work, and he made the point. He said two things that ties into this conversation. The first is this burn vote shit has to stop because of exactly
Oh,
this.
I completely disagree, but okay.
But because Tori and Derrick were not people's targets and they end up getting in there, he also said that he expected that Derrick and Tori were such a non-threatening team that they would go far. Because Tori's popular and Derrick is such a layup that it's just like the perfect reason why I'd like to keep them around long term.
Okay.
So for this to pan out the way it is, not to put my man Nick on blast, but it just goes to show, and I agreed with him completely, how surprising it was that Derrick and Tori went in. And on Twitter last night, lots of people were tweeting, like lots of housemates were tweeting like, "Oh shit, I'm so sorry. I never expected that you were going to go in. Like you were not my target."
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was a crazy twist, and I think while we were spending so much time being mad at all the relationship drama, bubbling underneath the surface was this great game twist the entire time. The problem was we were 5 episodes in or whatever it was, and we just didn't get enough of this, right? So the potential for this was always there. It's just so much of the focus was on the fact of the terrible relationship house drama that was going on, which I still have time for, just not nearly as much as was shown to us, right?
Yeah.
One thing I want to say though, shout out to the producers of the challenge for this actual competition. What a dope competition, right?
Oh,
like it gave me shades of American Gladiators, right? I feel like there was some form of this challenge on American Gladiators, but it was a dope physical challenge. It was one of those things too where looking at it from the start, I wasn't sure who was going to win. Like I thought both teams had a good shot at it, and I wouldn't have been surprised at whichever team won. But I'll say this. You mentioned, we already discussed, right? Josh Sylvia won, and it's because Josh figured out the game plan of I'm going to get up first and I'm going to help Sylvia. And that way we're going to be faster and getting 2 balls in faster than they're going to be, because obviously Derrick's not helping, what's her name? Tori, right? Here's my thing here. I kind of think that Tori, this all blew up in Tori's face. And the reason why I say that is because she spent the entire season crushing Derrick and blaming Derrick for everything and just killing his confidence. And so I think now that we got into a challenge that he would be good at, or, you know, something that fits his strengths better, he was so focused on, I'm going to beast. I've been the person letting us down. I'm going to like just go ham and, you know, dominate getting up this thing and then run back. And you know what I mean? Like, I think he was so focused. He's been waiting for this opportunity to kind of show like, I'm not this terrible player that I'm being made out to be. And she's been crushing him the entire time instead of, you know, trying to build that teamwork aspect that maybe he would have been focused on. Okay, well, I need to help her as well for our team to win, instead of being so focused on making myself look good because he's looked so bad, or at least she's told us that he's looked so bad. I kind of think this whole thing blew up in Tori's face, and it's her fault for just crushing him the entire way. And so it was on him now to boost himself.
I agree. And, you know, I quite like Tori. I think she's one of the better, newer people, right? This is only, her third challenge, not counting the Versus series.
Definitely.
And I agree. And it just goes to show how, not animosity, because it doesn't seem like they're super mean to each other, but like how their relationship is not a healthy one, right? But like there's deep-seated feelings. And let's give her credit. She basically says when they're back in the redemption house, or like, we got to work at being friends. Like she doesn't fully cop to like, we lost that because I've been on your ass for like the week that we've been here.
Yeah.
But she acknowledges, like, we need to figure out how to work as a team, and I need to stop criticizing you. And I also give her credit for being straightforward and saying, hey man, I had been like keeping you at arm's length because I don't want you to think I'm interested in you, because I'm not.
Yeah.
And
Which
like,
I think that's kind of BS though. I mean, I don't know their relationship. I don't know their interactions, but I'm just getting like, I'm being the dude and thinking back to just, maybe situations I've had in my life, let's say. But I just feel like sometimes when you hear that and it's kind of like, homegirl, get over yourself. Like, it's done. It's over. You know what I mean? Like, even if I think you did me dirty, and especially knowing that you did do me dirty, there's no way that, even if you did want to come back, that I'm taking you in. Right? So, like, get over yourself.
But we also haven't seen a lot of Derrick and Tori interactions.
Exactly.
In the house. And also, we don't know, the last time we saw him was on the reunion, I guess, for Dirty 30. Where, like, all that weird, like, people taking photos with their phones shit happened. We don't know if, like, he's been angling, if he sent her messages, like, off air to be like, we don't know the full story there, so maybe there's more backstory.
We just know that he was on, because he was just on that season of, is it Are You the One? Right? Because he was dating Angela, right?
Yeah.
From Are You the One? So, I mean, it appears anyways that he's been doing his own thing. I just felt like the way that Tori, and again, I'm going to back you up on this and say I like Tori as a character on these shows, right? I think she's a great character. She's great at narration. She's a good competitor. She tries hard, all that stuff, right? I just think in this instance, it looks kind of weird, right? And like, not to get too... is it Dr. Drew? Is he like the love doctor? Is yes. That Dr. Drew? Is that who I'm thinking of? Not to get too like, analytical on that standpoint, but I feel like they're looking at their team and their relationship. It was all about a power balance, right? And it's like Tori clearly, because she was the one that cheated on him, she was the one that has all the power in terms of how that played out, right?
Yeah.
And so she's just now on this thing, to me, it seems like, where she's maintaining that power and right. And like, keeping Derrick down. So you suck in the game, and, I wanted to keep you at arm's length because I don't want to give you the wrong idea that I might still have feelings for you, right? Like, there's no consideration in there for the fact that he might be like, yo, I know that you're with, what's his name? Jordan. I know you're with Jordan. I don't even care. Do your own thing. I've moved on. In case you missed it, I've been on other shows with other girls. Like, it's not that big of a deal. There might still be tension, but it's more awkward tension as opposed to, just us being like awkward. It's not that I have feelings for you or that I care, right?
You can be
that was
over
the kind of thing
a
I found
person.
weird.
You can be over a person, but not the situation. You know what I mean? Like, you can have moved on romantically.
Like yep.
But still be super pissed about how shit went down.
Totally hear you. And again, that's to me is what makes this show so good, because there's so many angles, right? I feel like it encompasses so many angles from all of reality television, right? And we're seeing this here where obviously it's a physical competition, but the mental aspect of having to rely on someone you once dated but cheated on you and did you dirty, or someone who's like your arch nemesis because of some game, or they cost you a bunch of money, like whatever it is, right? That adds a whole other mental level to the stakes of this game, right? And I think that's what makes this show so good. There's so many different angles to it that you got to be on top of your game for, right? Dope. But yeah, as you mentioned, they lose and they head to the redemption house.
Tori fills people in.
Yeah. Tori gets in and she fills in everyone and kind of breaks down everything and says that her, Cara, Shane, Jose, and Davon were all supposed to vote for Faith and Angela, but they didn't. And then this leads to this whole like pity party in the redemption house about people playing scared games. And especially your boy, Paulie, who like, he looked like he was on one. But this whole narrative of playing scared games, what does that even mean? That sounds like the whole like Bachelor thing of they're not here for the right reasons. You know what I mean?
It's definitely the challenge equivalent of they're not here for the right reasons.
Yeah, right. I'm like, what does that even mean? With this, like, I don't get how that. Like, do you understand what they're talking about or what they mean? Because to me, it just came off as a scared game means you weren't playing my game because I got eliminated.
I think it's one of those things where what they mean when they say playing scared is not doing your own dirty work, right? Like
But
an
hold on,
example of
though.
someone not playing scared is, remember that time. There's two great examples of people not
Jordan.
playing scared. Jordan, when he flipped all the things to take
Yep.
on Johnny Bananas, and Devin, when he angled for Johnny Bananas and
Yes.
said, like,
He just told everyone to put it. I want Johnny Bananas. Yeah,
yeah,
make it happen.
put him
Make
in,
it
I
happen.
can take him out. Yeah. Another example is CT and Adam in the original Rivals, where they
Okay.
basically had to take on all comers,
Hmm.
and they just knew that like they were going to get nominated every week, and that they had to just eliminate their way through. Like that's what people are talking about as like their platonic ideal of how to play the game. But I
Yeah.
think you're also right that a lot of people, when they say like, "Oh, you're just playing scared," when it doesn't go your way, you know what
Yeah,
I
and
mean?
the other thing is, wouldn't you argue that because everyone's game plan is you got to put in the rookies, put in the rookies, isn't that playing scared?
Yeah,
Right? Like the only people we want to put into the elimination are rookies, so that because they're, I mean, I'm doing air quotes, easier to get out because they're unfamiliar with the game. Like technically, wouldn't that be playing scared? Just focusing on taking out rookies? Like it doesn't make sense to me. CT like having big names, for lack of a better term, like CT being eliminated, right? Like that is a big move. You know what I mean? Like not that anyone else did that. I know they lost and that's how they ended up there, but I feel like from a game standpoint, if the whole point is to keep things entertaining and keep you on your toes, like I feel like the game itself has done a great job of that. And this whole scared moves or whatever, like Paulie, what was Paulie on, man? Like I didn't even understand that scene, even when he was still in the kitchen going off.
yeah.
Like I was like, is he being for real right now? Is he acting?
Well,
I
I was
didn't
going to ask
understand
you,
what he was doing.
does he have any right to be that worked up? Like, why is he so angry, for lack of a better term? Like, why is he so upset at this?
I don't know what I don't know. I didn't understand it at all. Like actually, I wrote down. Like, I'm like, what is he on? Because and I made sure to word this correctly because I didn't want to accuse someone of something. So I wrote down so I would not, cross a line. But I said he is exhibiting the behavior of someone that is on the finest forms of the cocaina. Right? Like I didn't understand what was going on. He's like pulling the old like WWF whole like I don't understand what this is. If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. What are people doing? And he's like hyping himself up, like, rocking back and forth, talking to the camera. Like it was weird, man. Like
well,
he's pacing up and down, like outside the house, talking to himself. The way that he's just talking to the camera in that confessional, like I was like, is he acting? Like what is happening? It was just
well,
weird.
I wanted to point out, and I'm sure you've noticed because you are the TV expert, they don't actually do confessionals with the people who are, or rarely do they do confessionals with the people who are in the redemption house. And when they do, it's a proper confessional. But
Yeah.
they
So
clearly
sometimes
shot that right outside the house. He was clearly just so amped up that someone, like a producer, was like, "Let's go get a camera on him. Like, let's backfill that wall so he's not like in darkness, and like
yeah.
let's capture this moment because he's a psychopath."
So the way that I would assume that it's shot is that they have a crew that's there monitoring the redemption house, right? Or they might have certain times where they're like, "Hey guys, we're gonna shoot at the redemption house." So obviously, when they know Tori and Derrick are showing up, they're gonna be ready for
Yeah.
them to shoot. And so, with that in mind, there would be a producer that's there that would see if you see something going on that's kind of like, oh, he's really hype, and you want to kind of elaborate on it because you feel like it might be a plot point or something they could use. You might pull that person aside, like if they got into an argument. Let's say a fight happened or whatever, right? You would be
Mm-hmm.
able to pull someone aside and be like, hey, so what just happened? Right? And
Yeah.
get a confessional that way on the spot instead of as you mentioned, the traditional, here's a sit down, here's a traditional background, here's whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that definitely, I guess, what we saw was only, a bit of it, Like, he must have been going off like crazy, or he's just a great actor, right? Because we did see some other great acting take place in this episode. So I don't know what was going on, but either he's a great actor or they got the purest coke. I don't know what was going down. But
I want to reiterate, I do not like Paulie. He is my least favorite person on this season of the challenge. I am so over his shit. But also, I am, like, fascinated by this guy just because I don't understand how his brain works at all. Because, like, again, he's talking about how everyone's playing scared and how, back in the day when I grew up watching the show, and the show I fell in love with, you went in and you did your own dirty work. But you're not doing anyone's dirty work. You've lost twice in 24 hours. Like,
Yep.
don't elevate yourself to the, like, I'm a killer. Like, do you know who can talk like that? Killer Cam can talk like that.
Speaking of, right? You're totally right. Like, he was making no sense. I didn't even know what he was talking about. It was super odd. And again, I'm so confused because Paulie's brother, who I think came in second in Big Brother, is so calm and like so totally different. I can't even remember his name right now. It's slipping my mind. Not important. But anyways, going back to the actual house, right?
Yeah.
We get a scene that is very key where we get a full breakdown of who's working with who, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first it starts with Kara trying to explain that, I guess she's explaining the other side of what Tori was talking about in the Redemption House. But Kara says, normally you try to play the friends game, but here I had to play a smart game, right? Which to me is what this whole thing has been about. It's not about, us voting together with power. It's about avoiding elimination and making sure that you're not in elimination. That's the most important thing, right? Because that is the only way that you can guarantee yourself staying in the game, is not being in elimination, right? Mm-hmm. So we get a breakdown. Marie says that she's aligned with Shane and Nelson, Cam and Kaylee, Sylvia and Joss, and kind of Zach and Amanda, right? Davon says she pretty much only trusts Angela and Faith, which is a problem, but makes sense later on, right? And Tony says that he has Brad and Kyle and Zach and Amanda, right? So that breakdown was very important for what was coming up next, right? And what will, I think, be a focal point for the rest of this season. And it kind of started with this challenge, right? First off, shout out to the fact that in this episode we saw an elimination and then we were getting to see a challenge. Dope, right? Imagine that. So we head to this actual challenge and it's called Dig Deep, right? And do you want to explain this one, John, or do you want me to do it?
I'll explain it. I can do it. I will admit, when TJ Lavin explained it, I did not understand what he was saying. It was one of those ones where I had to see it happen to be like, oh, I understand.
Yeah, same. I totally agree. Totally agree.
There are two teams split. TJ split them down the middle as they're standing, and then Zach and Amanda happened to be standing in the middle, exactly in the middle, and he let them choose which team they want to go on. They chose a team that was stacked. It included Brad and Kyle. It included Cam and Kaylee. It was
Nelson and Shane.
It had by far the better group of people on it. The more functioning teams. But the way the actual competition worked was that they called it a mine shaft. It was not a mine shaft. It was a room buried underground. Yes. And they had to do these 3D puzzles, sort of standard challenge sort of stuff. They were small. They're like handheld. They had to solve them, and once they solved them, they could open up further boxes that had tools and also the entryway to like loose soil so that they could dig themselves out of the mine shaft. They had to dig themselves out of the mine shaft and then run to the finish line. And the first pair that crossed the finish line from the winning team avoided elimination and gets the power vote.
Yes.
So, and that's the key part of this competition. It's you have to be on the winning team and you and your partner have to cross the finish line before any other partnership cross the finish line within the winning team.
So here's a key aspect of it, right? Because we got a sneak peek of Cam explaining to the crew before they went on this challenge that she had a plan, right? She tells them beforehand that she has a plan of how they should handle the next elimination, because obviously the last elimination didn't go the way that the house wanted, right? So she says that she has a plan. And now when you find out kind of the rules and how this challenge was going to go, things kind of make a little bit more sense, right? Because as the teams, I mean, the fact that there's a puzzle is another example of what I was talking about earlier of why this show is the best, right? Because you can be the biggest, baddest, strongest person there is, but if you can't solve this puzzle, you're useless, right? So what was so important to me about this challenge, John, was that you had to figure out your lane, right? Life is about lanes, and stay in your lane is the greatest advice I've ever heard in my life, right? Figure out what you're good at and know what you're not good at and stay in that lane. So if you can't do puzzles, fall back. Let someone else who can do puzzles take charge of that, right? And it took a while for them to get there, but the puzzle master, Cara Maria, who obviously just won last season's challenge season, right? Off being able to solve a puzzle. She was taking charge. She was doing it. Good job. Who was on the other side? Brad? Was it Brad also trying to take charge? And Zach's just like, charge. And what did Zach say? Brad needs to stop pretending to be smart and just shut up. Yeah. Zach had a great episode in terms of confessionals, no?
Yeah, just doing good confessional work. But it's actually is Brad's team that breaks through first, I believe, or were they just faster at digging? I think it's because they shut Brad up. They didn't really get the specifics of that, but I think someone like moved Brad to a corner and they're like, listen, we need you to stare at this light bulb for a few minutes.
And, you know, Brad himself, to his credit, did say at the end of the day, we kind of just need people to take charge, right? Like you need people to take charge. Now, did that need to be him the whole time? I'm assuming that at a certain point he realized that it wasn't about him. Right? Yeah. Whereas when you see Zach knew, hey, I don't know anything about puzzles. And he's just standing there watching it go down and letting the other people do their thing, right? That's what I thought was so cool. But another example of why this show's so good, because again, so many different angles, right? So as you mentioned, Brad's team, they start to figure it out. But here's another part of the difficulty of this challenge. They start digging the hole, but now you got to figure out, well, how do you decide? Who's the first person through? Who's the first team through? How do you decide an order of who gets to go through, right? Because Zach was one of the first people through, and he's one of the biggest guys, right? You would think that you would have sent the smallest people through first, but that's not really how it worked out. And Zach ends up being at the top, and he's yelling back to Amanda, hurry up, hurry up. And she's now at the door, but she can't get through because everyone else is fighting to get through. Whereas I think Cam realized early on, and I wonder if this was a thing known by the rest of her team, right? Because was it just a coincidence that her and Kaylee were the first ones through? Because I feel like there had to be some strategic, you know, like angle to that where the other people on their team had to be like, no, let Kaylee go.
I think what happened was Cam and Kaylee, I think Cam assessed the situation, and I had the sense that when it was obvious that the puzzles were coming together, I think she and Kaylee stood near the like exit point and just kind of slid in because they're small. Like, I think they just had good positioning. It's like rebounding in basketball. You don't have to be the biggest, you don't have to be the strongest. You just have to have the right positioning to set yourself up. And I think that's what she did.
And, like, Kaylee found her way right behind Zach. And right as you can see Kaylee going through, you can see Cam right behind her, like, getting ready to go right after, right? And I think at that point, they're fully focused on the next phase of the game. Whereas I think everyone else in that bunker, it appears, was just thinking, okay, now we got to get people through. It doesn't matter who, but they're still thinking in terms of the greater team and not necessarily their individual 2-person teams, right? But
And Zach was clearly in the right frame of mind, but
mhm,
I think Amanda, his mistake was he did not say to Amanda like, "You stick right by me."
yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Like Cam and Kaylee basically came at one after the other. Like
Yeah.
as they're coming through the dirt, they were probably like digging together pretty much.
Hmm.
Whereas Amanda basically found her way at the back of the pack. And I mean, I don't know what happened in the mine shaft, but Zach and Amanda should have had a conversation where Zach is like, "You basically push my ass through. Like that's how tight we have to be to get through this, and
What
like
did you
just
think?
follow my wake."
What did you think of Amanda? What did you think of Amanda yelling? Um, Not Amanda. Sorry, Cara Maria yelling, "I should get to go through. I'm the one that solved the puzzles."
Well, that's one of the trade-offs, right? Like if you take on the responsibility of solving the puzzle, you're basically at a position to get through the tunnel.
Do
Right? Like that's
you
part of the
think? I
brilliance
mean,
of the
because she
game.
wasn't one of the first people through, though. Like it didn't seem like anyone cared because she wasn't one of the first people through.
No, people didn't care. And I think I get the logic, right? The logic would be like, okay, we're working as a team right now. You solve the puzzle, and to
Mhm.
save us those precious extra seconds, we're going like the big dumb guys are going to be right by the exit point and start digging as soon as we can,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So like there is an efficiency to that.
no,
So
for
for
sure.
so for her to then be like, oh no, I get to go. I do think this is where she gets the reputation of being entitled.
Yeah, interesting. No, super interesting. Someone who I think is getting to that point where she should maybe start feeling entitled is Killa Cam, right? And as you
Oh,
mentioned, her and Kaylee end up winning. And right away, as TJ announced, okay, you guys won, you guys get all the power, Cam essentially stops TJ, right? And she's like,
I'm
oh,
gonna
I've
let
already
you
made up my
finish.
mind. Did she pull the Kanye? TJ, I'm gonna let you finish, but I just want to let you know, is that what happened there?
No,
But
she should have though. That was a missed opportunity. TJ, I'm gonna let you finish, but I want you to know that I'm quickly becoming the greatest challenge player in show history.
so good. But right there, she says that she already has a plan, and the cutaways to the reaction shots of the rest of the cast was so good. And
Yeah.
so, in that moment, TJ, who is we talk about TJ Lavin being a good host, and one of the reasons why is because he's very quick on his feet, right? Like
He
obviously he
is.
has his script and places that he wants to get to, but he's so good at interacting with them. And when Cam says, I've already made up my mind," TJ just simply says, "Well, do you care to elaborate on that?" And she's like, "Nope, it's a secret." And at that moment, I'm like, okay, what is really going down? Because, you know, we've been trying to figure out, the nature of this game and what's going on and what we could make work. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
how to sort of cheat the game. And I have no idea how they were going to do it. And then Killa Cam and Kaylee, if there was someone or a team that you would have thought would have figured out the game, would it have been the team who wasn't even partners to start this? Would it have been the
Nope.
team that, do you even remember DJ Mel and Kayla getting kicked off the show? And Cam and Kaylee probably should have been kicked off too because of their partners. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so crazy to think of where it was then to now, them walking in back into the redemption or into the house, and Cam calling a house meeting to basically just call the shots. Like how
Yep.
gangster is that?
Well, I mean, it's more gangster than that. She announces that she is either going to nominate Brad and Kyle or Sylvia and Joss.
Mhm.
And Sylvia goes off and immediately says, like, "Are you kidding, motherfucker? Like, you're one of my best friends. Like, what is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
And Cam cites precedent and points out, like, Joss, you nominated me in my rookie
Hmm.
season.
Hmm.
uh, Brad, you threw a grenade at me in my rookie season, and like I don't forget. So everyone in the house, plan accordingly. But that's the power vote is going to one of those two teams. But then in her regal white fur,
Yeah.
Cam explains to us in confessional that Sylvia and to a lesser extent Kyle are in on this plan. And that Sylvia is straight up acting. And Sylvia, to her credit, fantastic actress.
She should get an Oscar. She definitely should.
Just crying, but like believable crying.
Or I guess it would be
she
an Emmy
didn't go,
right?
She didn't go full angry. She went like angry, devastated. So like she looked like she was legitimately upset, but no one would be like, "Okay, Sylvia, you're going too far."
Yes, and for those people who are also watching Big Brother this season, right now, like in the middle of what's going on in Big Brother is one side of the house keeps getting blindsided. Like they think that they're working with people that they're really not. And each and every week they get fooled. But the acting that's going on, that's being done, is so horrible. Like it's really so bad. Like I'm watching thinking, how are you believing these people? It makes no sense, right? So to see what Sylvia, the performance that Sylvia put on, the tears that Sylvia put on, also the genius fact of not telling Joss so that Joss, he feels blindsided as well, but he's being real about it because he's not in on the plan. It was just so good from all angles. Well played by Killa Cam. But the other part to this,
the actual plan though.
Yes, so the plan is, right, by her telling the entire house that I'm going to use a burn vote, I haven't decided yet, but it's down to two teams, either Brad and Kyle, or what's the other team? Brad and Kyle, or
Joss and Sylvia.
Joss and Sylvia, right? By her telling the whole house that, none of the people are going to vote for those two teams because they don't want to risk having to go in an elimination against those two teams. So instead, they're going to find another team to pair up with and burn vote, right?
Yep.
What that means now in this instance, it's using the burn vote correctly, meaning you and another team make an agreement to where we're just going to vote for each other. We're both only going to have one vote. We know that no one else is going to vote for us, so we're going to be safe. Right?
Yep.
That's a genius plan. But here's the thing, right? How risky is that? Because you can assume that this is what everyone's going to do because they're not going to go, they don't want to go against Kyle and Brad. But you're not sure that they're smart enough to actually execute it, right? And burn your vote. Are you?
Well, here's the thing. That was the other smart part of this plan. Like, we're giving credit to Sylvia for her acting, and we're giving Cam credit for coming up with this, and all of that. But we got to give credit to Kyle, because Kyle's role in this was directing the conversation to this idea.
Yes.
Right?
What are we going to do? Who are we going to vote for? Yes. It's very true.
Kyle nudged it along, and for all we know, he suggested we should all do our burn votes. And like, he's the one who suggested, like, this was his role, and he played it perfectly as well to make it all
to ensure that, like, that side of the house with Johnny Bananas and Zach and all those guys, they're just going to vote for each other and burn their vote, right? Like, get that idea out there that, hey, let's burn our votes because it'll be left up to Cam. And I don't think that Cam wants to get rid of us yet anyways, but at least this way we can, at least if we all burn our votes, we can then go talk to her and be like, okay, who do you want to put in? Because it's going to just come down to you, which I think was a genius part of this whole thing. But the rookies, it seemed like they caught on the next day, right? There's that scene where Angela's talking to Davon and Jose, where she's explaining, hey, the rest of the house is burning their vote, so I guess we should do the same thing too. But now it's going to be up to Cam to put in whoever she wants. I don't think they realize the full plan in terms of her plan the whole time was to have you two teams go in.
Well, and I want to circle back to that in a minute, but Jose and, as you said, they also get into the, like, hey, we should just balance it and vote for each other. Yeah. And the real beauty of this strategy is that naturally people are going to create this burn vote agreement with their alliance member, which means that when Cam actually does vote, it means that because she and Kaylee cannot go into elimination, you're pitting two friends against each other.
Yeah.
Right? Because the only other people that voted for them will be the people that they had an agreement with.
Exactly.
And that is the prestige. That is the best part of this turn. So, as you said, it ends up being that when it comes time to reveal the votes, it's revealed that Cam and Kaylee actually voted for Angela and Faith.
Yes.
And so they're the ones going in, and the only people that they can select to go in against them are their friends, Davon and Jose. And Genius. I have one question for you, though, because I think the plan was beautiful. I think it was elegant. I think it was executed perfectly. But did Cam use it on the right people?
Well,
would this not have been a perfect time to throw in Johnny Bananas and Tony?
Well, here's the thing. Who are you? I know what you're saying. Throw them in against who, though?
Well,
do you know what I mean? Like, because the only team that it would be a fair elimination would be if you throw in Tony and Johnny Bananas against Brad and Kyle, right?
Well, Brad and Kyle voted for Joss and Sylvia. So who did Johnny Bananas and Tony, who was their burn vote put on?
I would assume Zach and Amanda.
That is an intriguing matchup.
No, it's not. I don't think so. Not in this challenge. I mean, they didn't know what the challenge would be at the time, but I mean, that's what I mean in terms of how risky this is, right? Because you need to ensure that if you were doing that, you need to ensure now that the next step to that, because I feel like there was another level to this that we might not have seen behind the scenes, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like Johnny Bananas and like that side of the house must have gotten wind of this and figured out that, okay, well, she wants to put in the rookies, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's such a high risk to say, because if I'm Johnny Bananas, right, and I'm just trying to burn my vote, I'm going to go to one of the weak teams, right? I'm going to go to a weak team that I think I can beat on the off chance that this whole plan backfires. At least now I burned my vote, and the only people I could go against is a weaker team.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there had to be, like, the scene where we see Nelson and Kyle breaking everything down with Tony. I feel like there had to be some discussion of, listen, if we burn our votes on each other, we have to have some inclination that Cam's focus is on getting the rookies and Faith out. Like Faith and what's her name? Faith and Angela, or Davon and Jose out. Because I feel like there's a consensus that that's what they were trying to do last week. They just didn't know how to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, but Cam figured out how to go about it.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean,
because that's the only way it makes sense, right? Because when you're watching it, right, when they had the actual scene where they're breaking down who everyone's picking, Brad and Joss, who were the two people who weren't in on this whole deal, right, who didn't know what was going on, but as their partners are explaining it, they're correct to be so hesitant, right? Because you're trusting in the fact that everyone else stuck to the plan, which to me is the beauty of this whole thing, because going forward, someone else is going to think, hey, I'm going to do the exact same thing that Cam did, right? Except now knowing the outcome, right, and how it fully works, it's so easy to flip it and to turn, right? There's no way you can execute this unless everyone is on board, except for the two teams that you're putting in.
The other thing is that there has to be an odd number of teams in the house for it to work. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because once you subtract Cam and Kaylee's team, then you need an even number of teams to cancel each other out along the line. So, I mean, we haven't even gotten to the mercenaries, the mercenaries kind of fuck it up. But in theory, let's say there were no mercenaries,
Yeah.
and Cam and Faith and Angela had to take on Davon and Jose.
One team loses. Yep.
One of them loses. One of them is out of the house. Suddenly, there's an even number of teams in the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like, you can't do this trick again until another team gets eliminated, because you need that odd number for it to work.
Yeah, I just think that as genius as the plan was, I just think the part they didn't show us, because obviously it makes for way better television, was that everyone else has to be in on what's going on. Like, everyone else, like Johnny Bananas and them, have to know that Cam's plan is ultimately to have the rookies face off against each other. Right?
Well,
because
I don't think they
I
need to
wouldn't
know
trust
that, because like, as far as Johnny Bananas and Tony know, they're safe. Right?
But that's what I mean. Like, but how can you fully trust that, right? Like, you don't know that, right? Like, she could do exactly what you're saying, right? Where at the end of the day, if Johnny Bananas, like, imagine if it was Johnny Bananas and Tony that said, hey, we're going to burn our vote on Brad and
Kyle.
What's his name? Brad and Kyle. Then what happens then, right? Like, you can't trust that then, because then at that point, if I'm Cam, I'm taking my shot and saying, all right, those two teams can go against each other, and one of the dominant guys groups are going to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it's just such a massive risk, and so many people need to be involved on some level, right?
Mm-hmm.
What I think that reveal was, where she's telling the girls, like, oh, you know, Sylvia was acting. Like, I think their reaction was more to the Sylvia acting part, as opposed to Cam's whole plan of, hey, well, I was going to do this the whole time. Because I think they kind of know. Like, you kind of know where everyone's head's at, right? Like, who people are targeting and who they want to get out of the house, right? It was just getting it to the point where Cam was the one making the lone decision and not everybody else in the house.
I loved Shane's confessional where he's like, I'm terrified of Cam. And it begs...
It was a genius play.
It was a genius play. I have to say, though, as I alluded to earlier, Faith and Angela go in. It looks like they have no choice but to vote for their friends, Davon, or to choose their friends, Davon and Jose, to go against them in elimination. But then TJ, in another one of his damn twists, announces that there's mercenaries coming in, and now they don't eliminate you, they replace you.
Which is another great, great twist.
See, here's the thing. I love the twist. And they keep saying, like, oh, TJ threw another curveball at us. But, like, the entire point of a curveball in baseball is that it looks like a fastball, and it's not. Mm-hmm. And we just haven't gotten enough fastballs. Like, is it really a twist?
That's true.
If
no,
every
and I know
week
what you're saying.
They're not, like, just like, it would be a more effective twist if, like, they had standard competitions for, like, 3 weeks in a row, 3 episodes in a row. And then on the fourth one, they're like, oh, but wait, here's a thing we're doing. You know what I mean?
So,
like, there's just
I got
I wish they'd ease up on the twists. I
am
glad to see Hunter and Smashley, though.
Yeah, shout out to Hunter and Smashley. 2 good characters, 2 great challenge competitors. You know, like, they're not going to back... Like, they're good competitors, but also good house competitors, house drama competitors, let's say, right? And they have a storied past in which they hooked up at one point on one of the seasons. So, yeah, them entering the house, like, if that's what ends up happening, will be very drama-filled, right? So I think that it's a good look either way. What I was going to say, though, was that the other thing to remember about this challenge, or the way that this is playing out, is that Cara Maria on Twitter, and I'm going to paraphrase because I'm not bringing up the exact tweet, but she basically said, oh, mercenaries just come in and they get to take a spot in the house. Maybe that's my game plan for next time around, right? Because, and her point was, it's such a huge advantage, right? Like, they've already been in the house, there's so much drama, and then halfway through, not even halfway through, but you know, after a first couple weeks or whatever, you just get to win one elimination and then automatically you're in the house, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a crazy, you know, and for someone like her who's a vet, she's like, oh, I'll take that chance instead of having to battle right from the beginning all the way to the end. It's an interesting point, but also kind of sour grapes.
But also, I'm blanking, and maybe one of our listeners can remember. But there was a season where Cara Maria, there was two seasons where Cara Maria got to come in late. Obviously, there was Invasion of the Champions.
Mm-hmm.
She got to come in late.
Yep.
And like the whole premise was that it was an advantage. But there was another season where she was a replacement player, where like maybe it was a rivals season or something, but she came in late as well. So like,
Yeah, it happens.
like
It
he's
happens,
up on
right?
the sour grapes there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was your favorite line of this episode?
Mine's super simple, actually, and it's going to be to TJ. When TJ walked in just before the voting, before everyone was about to vote, he walks in and he just looks at Cam sitting there in her killer Cam fur, and he just looks and calmly goes, "Oh, you fancy, huh?" I was like, yes. Shouts to TJ Lavin. And of course, as mentioned before, whenever there's a Drake line, we're going to reference that here because we're from Toronto. And
Yeah.
we like to remind all of our American friends that listen to our podcast that we are proudly Canadian.
Yes, except no substitutes. I think for me, my line was Joss describing Derrick's performance. Said he's about as useful as the G in lasagna.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
I
That's pretty
quite
good.
like that. Normally, this is the point in our podcast where I say, Sheldon, I have to ask you, who killed it this week? But
Well,
I
we
think
know
I know
that.
the answer.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's impossible to pick anyone else, right?
it's impossible to pick anyone but Cam, so I have an alternative question for you.
Ooh, okay.
And it's going to provoke some deep thought.
Okay.
Is Cam one of the best challenge players ever?
No, still too soon. It's still too soon.
But like
she's on her way.
seeing the start of greatness.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's moving up the ranks in my mind. Like
Definitely.
like if we had a top 5, and it's let me rephrase it then. Is she becoming one of the best female players in challenge history? Because like the
Still
top
too soon.
5 is probably, certainly the top 4 is all men. It's Johnny Bananas, Wes, CT, and Darrell, in my mind, are the top 4. And then
Interesting. I might have Laurel somewhere up there, but okay.
Yeah, I'd say Laurel's in the top 5. And like Cara Maria would have to be there. But like Cam is surging up. She is like LeBron James in Cleveland the first time out. Like
It's tough though, right? Because there's
we're
like
seeing
Evelyn,
greatness.
right? We got to think like Evelyn. You got to think, you know what I mean? Like there's some old school bangers that like. I still don't know if any female competitor I've seen on this show is better than Laurel. Like I still don't know if that's a thing. But
Yeah.
I'll say this: Killa Cam is definitely on her way, and like her early, like she's having a Derrick Rose start to her career, right? And I'm not using Derrick Rose because I think something's going to happen and the rest of her career will suck. I'm just talking about the meteoric rise. I'm just talking about the meteoric rise right away, right? And we saw that happen time and time again with certain people, right? But Derrick Rose was a legit MVP of the NBA, right? Very early on. So it was kind of like a next level thing super soon. And I think that's where we're at with Cam now. And this move, in terms of figuring out the game for this week and how to get out your desired, or at least put into the elimination your desired 2 teams, it was genius. How to manipulate the majority of the house, or to figure out the game, and not only figure out the game versus the other people in the house, but against the producers, right?
Yes.
What a great job. Such a good job.
And I have to say, like, to continue stretching our basketball analogy, it's like seeing a great post-up player suddenly show that they have 3-point range.
Yeah.
Like, and this is not a criticism of Cam at all, but like she was known as Killa Cam, the queen of eliminations previously, right? Like 4-0, matching her GPA.
Yeah.
But suddenly, she shows that she's a political player too. And
Yeah.
like this move, I mean, it would be we only time will tell if she can like replicate this kind of political success. But this shows a keen intellect, and in my mind, makes Cam and Kaylee one of the most dangerous teams in the house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see like how like the effects of this for the rest of the season. Do you know what I mean? Like how will this play out when next week's redemption happens, or not redemption, next week's elimination battle happens, right? Or voting, sorry, goes down. I'm interested to see how that will play out and the effects of that. Like, will someone else try to do the same thing as Cam? Will the rest of the house, and I mean the same thing as Cam in terms of blatantly lying to the house and saying, hey, I'm going to use my votes for these people, right? You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Because again, the level of trust it would take to have the whole house on board, or at least enough of your alliance members on board to follow through with it. That's risky, man. That's super tough. And
Well,
credit to Cam for getting it done, and
it's also
credit to
important.
Sylvia.
Yeah, but it also helps that Cam is super popular in the house. Like,
Yeah,
there's no one who really dislikes Cam. Even her vendetta, Kaylee, likes Cam.
yeah. Killer
So
Cam, man.
she played her position well.
Yeah, the only people mad about it were the scene too, where she's like talking with Marie and all them, and then you see Jose and Angela just being super salty on the balcony.
Hmm.
That was kind of funny because it's like it's just straight hating, right? Because it was a great plan, but they're looking at it like, oh, they're still talking about playing the scared game, which doesn't make any sense, but also talking about how fake she is. And it's like, well, it was a plan. Like, we're playing a game. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? It was just funny to watch them be all salty, and then you realize, oh, well, they're really mad because they're just on the outside looking in,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
yeah, I
If
just
they
can't wait
pull
to see
that
how
off,
the
they'd
rest of
be
it
just
plays
as
out.
pleased.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how the rest of this plays out. I'm super excited. I wrote down with exclamation marks, the challenge is back, right? This season is back. I'm hype. I'm all in. This was an amazing episode. Great, like just politicking going on. A great move by Killer Cam. We got a challenge and an elimination and a twist at the end where Smashley and Hunter have a chance to come back into the house. Very minimal appearances from the Redemption House, which I'm totally cool with,
Yep.
right? But yeah, great episode by the challenge. All in, happy to be here.
We also on here on You Killed It. We have a cool and exciting announcement. As you
We
said at the top of the show, we have difficult work schedules. Particularly, I work most nights. But
yes,
next week, I am not working Tuesday night. I will actually be able
yes.
to watch the challenge live, and we're going to be taking advantage of that because you're going to be able to, you the listener, are going to be able to watch it live with us. And Sheldon, I'll let you explain it.
So we're gonna do something a little special on You Killed It next week. We're gonna watch the show live, but then right after the show ends, you have the ability, our fans, to log on to a site called Sia Live, right? And so You Killed It, the You Killed It podcast will be teaming up with this interactive platform called Sia Live, where you, the viewers, get to speak with us after the show, and we're gonna talk about all the twists and turns that happened, get immediate reaction from the episode. We'll take your questions. You can join in on the conversation. And this is a visual platform as well. It's kind of like a chat room, for lack of a better term, but only it's through video. So the video can pop up on the screen and we'll be able to talk to each other. Now, our normal podcast, you'll still be able to get it the exact same normal way. It'll still be posted in all the same places later on during the week. But this is just something that's going to be super special. Next Tuesday, right after the episode of the challenge airs, we'll be going live again on Sia Live.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be a part of this, how this platform works is there are tickets, and tickets cost $3. And that's how you join in to be a part of the conversation with us, right? Join in, interact with us live during the podcast. And again, you get to ask like video questions and literally be a part of the conversation with us next week. Now, as I mentioned, tickets are $3, but for our day one fans, a first time in, because again, this is something we're trying out. If you use the code CHALLENGE, all in caps, you get in for free. So you get to test this out, be a part of the podcast next week with us for free using the special code CHALLENGE. So you just got to go to See Ya Live, log in, they'll take some of your information, sign up for an account on See Ya Live, use the code CHALLENGE, and you can be a part of our live experience next week on See Ya Live, where we collaborate and do a live edition of the You Killed It podcast. So we're getting exclusive access on a new platform to use, and how it works is you can use it on your laptop or desktop computer, or you can download the app in the Google Store if you're on mobile. So iOS users will be able to take part in September when the app launches there, but you can still watch us and take part if you just use Google Chrome. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, feel free to tweet us, as we always give up our information, and I think we're pretty good at responding to people on Twitter. We'll also make a post of this on Facebook, and I'm sure we'll tweet out details from our Twitter accounts. We'll post it in the Facebook group. I'll post it in the Reddit group. But yeah, if you want to be a part of next week's You Killed It podcast, we'll be doing it live next week, right after the challenge episode airs on television. And yeah, again, very important part. I just want to make sure for our listeners, don't worry, the normal podcast, we will then take that, and that podcast will then be available for your consumption in the normal way that you normally consume things. So don't worry about that. We're just doing something new to enhance the live experience, right? Because the thing is, we've always wanted to do something, right? Like, we've always talked about this podcast is just us talking, right? Like, it's our group text that we decided to record our conversations and make that into a podcast. Now, we're just opening up the group chat to the public, right? And allowing other challenge fans to come in and join the conversations with us and literally join the conversation with us. So this is something super fun. Again, See Ya Live, just go on to sia.live. Sia spelled, I guess I should emphasize that part. Yeah. Sia, which is spelled CYA.live. Again, CYA.live. When you get on there, log in, use the password CHALLENGE, and that will allow you to bypass the $3 charge that this great feature would normally cost. So yeah, testing something out next week. I'm excited to interact with all of our fans that, we're normally tweeting with or whatever. This will just enhance that conversation.
Absolutely. And we should add, it's 10 p.m. Eastern, because that's when the show wraps up here in Toronto.
Yes.
So, plan accordingly if you're in a different time zone.
Yes.
I know that we have listeners across the United States and Canada.
Yep.
And also around the world. We do have some listeners in Asia and in Europe. So,
sure,
plan accordingly if you want to participate. But as Sheldon pointed out, you'll still get us on SoundCloud or iTunes or YouTube on the regular schedule. This is just an opportunity for you to speak with us and ask questions and just participate in the conversation. And you'll get to hear your voice on the podcast as well if you participate.
The other thing too that will be super cool about this, there's big plans down the line, which I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but there could be opportunities down the line where, we're joined by people from the show. So if these things go well, there's an opportunity to blow this up into something that's really fun. And again, this whole thing is just about interacting with fans, like-minded fans that also enjoy this show that we clearly love, right? And enjoy and talk about each and every week. We wanted to find a way to bring you guys into the conversation as well, and See Ya Live provides us with that opportunity. So we're going to try this out. Again, sia.live, CYA.live.
So Sheldon, where can the people find you on social media?
You can find me just singing the praises that the challenge is back. You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander, and Sheldon Alexander on YouTube for our YouTube content as well.
And you can get me on Instagram and Twitter at jchidleyhill. I just keep it simple, at jchidleyhill. And until next week, when you can get us on See You Live, this was You Killed It.
You killed